Senator Sanders exposes the lies and the false pretenses to the military conflicts and bogus authorization to go to war. He blamed this on the lack of oversight of Congress in fulfilling their constitutional obligation to wage war. Congress' lack of oversight is responsible for untold deaths due to illegal mercenary conflicts. And for what? So some billionaire or corporation to make more money. To this day, nothing has changed. Here is Bernie saying the quiet part out loud.
Testimony. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution states very clearly, and I quote, Congress shall have the power to declare war, end quote. The Founding Fathers gave the power to authorize military conflicts to Congress for one very simple reason. Congress is the branch of the government that is most accountable to the people. There is no question but that over the years, Congress has allowed its authority over this very important issue of lawmaking to ebb. It is time for us to reassert that authority and to start asking some very tough questions about the wars, and I use the word wars, W-A-R-S, that we are currently in. Now, some people may think that this is an interesting abstract discussion. We have brilliant constitutional scholars, wonderful intellectual debate. But let me assure every person here that the abdication of Congress to its responsibilities over war has had incredibly dire and horrific consequences for the people of our country and, in fact, the world. So I want to bring this down to earth and away from an abstract, although enormously important constitutional discussion. I want to give you 3 examples in recent American history where Congress did not ask the right questions, abdicated its responsibility, and the consequences were enormous. Very few Americans know that when we deal with Iran, very much in the news right now, how many people know that in 1953, the United States, along with the British, overthrew the democratically elected government of Mohammad Mossadegh, reinstalling authoritarian rule under the Shah. In 1979, the Shah was overthrown in the Iranian Revolution, bringing to power an extremist anti-American government. In 1953, the United States government, without congressional approval, thought that it could simply remove the government of Iran in order to protect wealthy oil interests. And what has been the consequences of that over the years? Congress abdicated its responsibility. And the second one, more relevant to my generation, was the war in Vietnam. In 1964, now Iran took place under Eisenhower, Republican. In 1964, Lyndon Johnson, Democrat, otherwise, in my view, a very great president. But in this instance, cited an attack on a U.S. ship in the Gulf of Tonkin as a pretext for escalating the U.S. intervention in Vietnam. But we now know from his own recordings that Johnson himself doubted that story about that attack. Johnson's administration misled both Congress and the American people into a war that resulted in the loss of over 50,000 American soldiers and over 1 million Vietnamese. Congress was lied to. There was no serious debate about American intervention in that war. Third example, more recently, that we all remember was Iraq. Today, it is now broadly acknowledged that the Iraq war was a foreign policy blunder of enormous magnitude. In this case, the Bush administration lied to the American people, claiming that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. The result of that war, the loss of thousands of brave American soldiers, the displacement of millions of people in the Middle East, and bringing us to where we are right now. In other words, what we have seen is time and time again, disasters occur when administrations, Democrat and Republican, mislead Congress and the American people, and when Congress fails to do its constitutional job, in terms of asking the hard questions of whether or not we should be in a war. And I think we need to ask that very hard question today. And here is the point that I hope the American people are asking themselves. Is the war on terror a perpetual, never-ending war necessary to keep us safe? I personally believe that we have become far too comfortable with the United States engaging in military interventions all over the world. After 9/11, Congress passed an authorization for the use of military force, quote, against those responsible for the recent attacks launched against the United States, end quote. The following year, Congress passed the 2002 AUMF against Iraq. We have now been in Afghanistan for 17 years. We have been in Iraq for 15 years. We are occupying a portion of Syria, and this administration has indicated that it may broaden that mission even more. We are waging a secretive drone war in at least 5 countries. Our forces right now, as we speak, are supporting a Saudi-led war in Yemen, which has killed thousands of civilians and has created the worst humanitarian crisis on the planet today. Clearly, these outdated and expansive AUMFs have been used by 3 different administrations, Republican and Democrat, as a blank check for the president to wage war without congressional consent or oversight. Meanwhile, we are currently, quote unquote, fighting terrorism in some 76 countries with an estimated cost of $5.6 trillion and untold lives lost since 2001. I think it is very clear, and our panelists, I think, made the point extraordinarily well, without exception, that the time is long overdue, Mr. Chairman, for the United States Congress to respect the Constitution of this country and to stand up for that Constitution and to demand that it is the Congress of the United States, not a president, who determines whether our young men and women are put in harm's way. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Let me ask you this question, and you may well have gone over it when I wasn't in the room. When we talk about giving the president today virtually complete authority, if we read in the paper that the president decided to bomb someplace tomorrow, nobody would blink an eye, right? That's what we've seen for decades. You talk about the presidential impact of allowing presidents to do this. What does that mean above and beyond wars, above and beyond abrogating the Constitution of the United States? What does it mean to our quality of life in this country?
Oh, I think it's the fact that we're having this kind of a conversation about whether the president could kill Americans in America or whether the president can engage in perpetual war, no matter how noble he believes that cause is, speaks volumes about how low we have sunk with respect to culture, morality, and fidelity to first principles in the Constitution, Senator Sanders.
Okay.
I think that there's really a twofold problem here. One is that Benjamin Franklin, as you I'm sure recall, at the convention was asked by Mrs. Powell, "What was it that you have wrought? What have you created?"
Is that really true, by the way? Did he really say that?
That's a fact. That's a fact that I don't want to check.
News? I don't know.
Only Jonathan believes that actually happened.
Right. And he said, "It's a republic if you can keep it." And that is the problem with being in perpetual war, is that my boys have never lived in a country that has not been at war. Both of them have literally never spent a day of their lives when we have not been at war. It becomes a natural state. And the example of that is one of the most chilling things I saw in my lifetime was when Eric Holder went to my alma mater law school to announce the kill policy of the Obama administration. Said that the administration was now asserting the right to kill an American citizen on the president's sole authority, without charge, without conviction, and that he believed he had that authority that was inherent in Article 2. And instead of having any objections, a room full of leading law professors and judges applauded applauded an attorney general saying the president has the inherent right to kill any of you. And the reason this becomes dangerous is take a look at the OLC opinions that we talked about recently. In the OLC opinion, they argue the president had unilateral authority to go to war without the approval of Congress because of, quote, the historical gloss of past wars. So what has happened is that this body, because it has acquiesced for so long, that is now being used as an interpretive
That's the precedent that they're using.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Senator Sanders, I was really struck by something you said earlier, which was to talk about kind of what this is like, what this is all about in reality,
Right,
as opposed to theory. And I do think that one of the dynamics around this discussion about putting together a new IUMF is that this has become kind of a lawyer's game among lawyers about law, right? It's like one big logic game, and it's telling here. Although, I don't want to be off this panel, right? But we're, 3 lawyers here on this panel. Literally one hearing in front of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee was 2 lawyers there. The earlier versions of this, which, kind of came out of some of the Lawfare blog writers and thinkers there, there were panels both in the House and the Senate earlier. There were all lawyers on those. Right, and a lot of it just gets tossed around as well, kind of how we haven't done this in 17 years. So how do we rearrange the words on the page? Right, and one of the things that we've been trying to bring home to people and talk about the Corker-Kane AUMF is without even going to new groups, look at it has Al-Shabaab and has Somalia, right? I have a 16-year-old too? All right, do I want my 16-year-old going to war against Al-Shabaab in Somalia? My son probably can't find Somalia on a map, and probably very few people even in this room know who Al-Shabaab is, right? But this basically would be Congress. Now, that's not even turning what the president comes up with.
Right.
This would be Congress saying the United States can go to war against Al-Shabaab in Somalia. That doesn't mean just sending a drone there, here and there, right? That means if the president wants to send 200,000 troops there and go in all-out house-to-house fighting,
right,
as we did in Afghanistan and Iraq, we could do that. And
all right, my time is right.
Senator Sanders makes a passionate plea, however he is arguing with himself. He is a senator of the same congressional corporation that is beholding not to the peoples, but the foreign corporate owner and their shareholders. The good news is that this is not the American Congress of 1781, established for the living people. The Congress of 1781 provides lawful rights, not just legal rights. The difference is your political status. For further understanding visit www.themarylandassembly.us, or why should I correct my status, the American States Assembly at americanstatesnationals.org.